Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. John Kelly, profiler here, and hope you're having a great day. Welcome back. It's good to be back. It's been a while. It's been probably about a month since we did our last video. And today we're going to be doing something a little different. Today we're going to be profiling the cops. I want to bring out that we're going to have a book. My book's going to be posted up there. It's called Discovering Lazarus, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly of John Kelly. If you want to take a look at it, a link will be posted up above. Along with that, I also want to welcome our guests today. We're very fortunate and lucky to have psychotherapist Leo Battenhausen, who's been a colleague and friend of mine for many, many, many years. And Leo's an author and a therapist. He's both, okay? He's written Evolution, the Evolution of America. He's written Social Side, How America is Loving Itself to Death. I'll tell you, it's so appropriate for these times, Leo, to see evolution out there with all this insanity that's going on, all these mass murders and riots and everything else. And then Social Side is a great book, How America's Loving Itself to Death. The narcissism of people, how that's growing throughout America. And then last but not least, a really good book, and it's called Soul Doubt, Souldoubt. So as you can see, Leo keeps himself busy. These are just three of his books that he's written, and he's also a psychotherapist with a very, very nice practice in Flemington, New Jersey. Soul Doubt is more or less a book on spirituality and depression, if you will. Very good read, very spiritual read. And, his practice in Flemington, New Jersey can be found if you want to search through Psychology Today. If you go on Psychology Today and you click on Leo Battenhausen, you'll find him in Flemington, New Jersey. That's Leo Battenhausen on Psychology Today. And also on another search called Good Therapy. If you want to search Good Therapy in New Jersey, Leo Battenhausen, Battenhausen, Leo Battenhausen. And we're just so lucky to have him today. And what we're going to be talking today, as I mentioned earlier, is the cops. Okay, and I just want to bring out right off the hop, there is no law without law enforcement. If you don't have law enforcement, you are not going to have any laws. You cannot reward negative or violent or criminal behavior if you do not have some kind of consequence. And without law enforcement, you do not have that consequence. Okay. There should be no defunding of the police departments as far as I'm concerned. And of course, I'm on the front lines in a lot of these cases. I work with a lot of cops, and I want to tell you, there's some bad cops out there, like Derek Chauvin. There's no question about it. There's some bad cops out there in any profession, whether it's profiling, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's nursing, whether it's doctors. I don't care what profession that you go to or you look at. You will find there are some bad eggs, there's some bad people. And it's no different in law enforcement. But the vast majority of people in law enforcement are really very good. And I've worked with some really terrific cops, I've got to tell you. Again, the vast majority are good people. Who's going to come to save you in the middle of the night if you're under attack or there's some kind of violence going on? I mean, who are you going to call up? Your neighbor down the street? You know who's going to be available to come? The cops. A cop will come 24/7. They're on call. And if you're under assault or attack, a cop is going to show up at some point. There's no question about it if you call. So I think it's very important for us to realize that. You know, I look at the gang violence in the cities and it makes me sick because I see these kids getting killed. I see passerbys being shot. I see these gangs shooting at one another. And I have to tell you, I feel extremely sorry for the poor people in a lot of the African American neighborhoods because African Americans commit more violence on African Americans than anybody else does. The other thing I want us to think about is, you know, the other communities in the area as well, and the violence that goes on there. We have so many different domestic situations that take place. And if you don't have cops to call, if you don't have cops to come, you're in trouble. There's going to be major trouble. And that's why defunding of the police is just not going to work because cops are quitting. And, you know, if you don't have cops, you don't have law enforcement, and therefore you have no laws. Leo, sorry for being so winded. Tell me what you think about defunding the police.
I have to agree, John. Of course, I agree. I mean, this makes absolutely no sense to me to take away our protection. You know, that says on their cars to protect and serve. That is what they're supposed to do. And for, like you said, for the most part, most police officers do their job and then some. You know, you watch the shows on, you know, the television and the police shows, the real crime shows. You know, these cops are moved by a lot of these cases. That's just an example. They think of their own kids if they're dealing with kids that got murdered or raped or anything that has to do with a kid really hits home. So what we're attacking our first line of defense and saying they need to be defunded. I have absolutely no clue where we're going with that. And like you mentioned before, African Americans are suffering most. Well, and let me put it this way: anybody in an very urban area where crime is very high, drugs and gangs. It could be some whites or Latinos and blacks, of course. Probably the majority are probably black. I'm not being racist, but and they want the police there. I've been doing some studying and reading on this. Far more want them in their neighborhoods than they don't. So I don't understand the logic. I don't think we need to defend our cops. I think they're taking a real beating in many ways before this whole thing started, you know, and before COVID started. And then, you know, now they're hearing they want to be defunded. They were there for us during COVID. They want to go home at night like the rest of us. But you know, if they're going to protect, or their main job is to protect and serve us. But what they see every day, who knows? You know, beatings, domestic abuse, murders, blood, guts. I don't know what they see, but they suffer for it in mentally and internally. And like you said, a lot of them are resigning. They're just like, you want me to listen to this and continue to fight for people that don't want me here, which is not really the case. Where the majority is of people don't want them gone. So I don't find this either. I've worked with cops as well, John, and there are some very good cops, and there are a few bad cops, I suppose. I've seen more good than bad, and we've seen their suffering. We have seen it up close and personal, and they just want to do their job. So I don't know. This whole defunding. Actually, I think it sounds like it's going backwards. Some of these big cities like Chicago and New York and San Francisco, they want the cops back now. Yeah. Seattle, Wait, so okay, no, second thought, we need them here. So that's a good sign, I suppose. But yeah, I don't understand the logic behind this, and I really think it's something that is going on. It won't go away that overnight. But with that, we're talking about it. I'm very happy. I'm glad you're doing this, and I appreciate you having me on here to do that with you.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's our honor. I look at the situations going on, and I see a lot of cops retiring because they feel that they're not respected. I see some cops recently have quit a SWAT team. I forget where it's at, but it seems that a lot of cops are trying to you know get out the door. I mean, the majority obviously are staying, but there's a lot of cops retiring, taking early retirement, looking for other ways out the door because they feel they're in a fixed game. They feel they can't win. The game is fixed. That they're going to lose no matter what. Okay,
Mhm.
and they're out there putting themselves on the line. They're putting their life on the line. They're trying to help somebody, and they have to worry about you know what can be mistaken as them being too aggressive or too assertive or too harmful. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if a cop is violent and trying to hurt somebody, going out of his way to hurt somebody, deserves to pay for it. But the vast
Absolutely.
majority aren't. I mean, they're caught up in these different situations, and they have to be. People have to take into consideration, what's going on there. However, getting back to what I was saying, when you have these cops that are just, walking out the door and they're just trying to figure out a way to retire and, put it all behind them and everything. See, this sets a bad situation up because how are you going to get new recruits? How are you going to get new cops? Who's going to want to do this job? Like, who's going to want to do this job if they think, you know, that they're going to end up, in a whole lot of trouble or getting sued? It's a very, very dicey situation. It's a very dicey situation, and
That
in the middle
that's
of
a very
chaos too.
excellent point because then the narrative is cops are bad people. They're no good. They want to kill you if you're a minority of some sort. So you're right. Well, I mean, who wants to go into a profession where you're hated or report, put out there to be this evil person, this monster that's no good when that's not true? I mean, and of course not, for the most part. And yeah, they're getting out the door. And who will replace these people? That's a very, very relevant question. And I've never really thought about that. And I appreciate you bringing that up because how do you fill that void? How do you replace people when there's, no appreciation or respect for the position itself?
Yeah, and
I don't
and
think that's easily done.
exactly. And the other side of it is when these guys leave their house, lots of them, I won't say all of them, but a lot of them, when they leave their house and they're going on patrol, or they're detectives or undercover guys or whatever they're doing. I mean, lots of times they don't know for sure they're coming home, and their loved ones don't know for sure they're coming home. I mean, that's a hell
Right.
of a job.
Well,
That's a
think
hell of a
about
job. Hey, honey, I'm going off to work, but I don't know if I'm coming home.
it's like going off to war.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I come back.
and in bigger cities, it is like going off to war.
Absolutely, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is, and what we have is a much bigger influx of drugs and gangs, and I mean, and all the guns that come with it, and of course, all the shootings that go along with it, and all the innocents that end up dying from it. So it's and getting wounded. We're not even really talking about all the people that get wounded that don't die, but there's a lot of violence and harm that comes from a rough area if you don't have law enforcement ready to engage it. It has
You
to
re-
be engaged, you
does.
know, and I think you brought that out pretty good in your book, Evolution, or what is it, The Evolution of America? I mean, in your
Yeah.
book.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Talks about that.
it really, it's just this constant uh, violence that's going on, and really, if you look at the stem of it, I think we have to look at child abuse with a lot of it. I mean, a lot of these guys out there that are just running amok in gangs or whatever. I mean, they've had little or no, solid parenting or anything like that growing up. We know that from the work we've done and all
Hmm.
the people we've analyzed over the years. But it's, it's
And
a,
then
it's a pretty rough job. You know, Cops have the highest suicide rate. I think you came up with a number. I know you were talking about a number. Do you
one
remember?
in four, John. One out of four.
1 out of 4 cops commit suicide or have
Correct.
a suicide attempt.
Have committed, and the number has gone up. I just saw something. New York and Chicago and San Francisco again are the highest numbers. They have their own internal crisis going on, these police departments and forces, because 9 of their guys, brothers, killed themselves in a year. In a year. Okay, so these numbers are going up. So it is 1 in 4. And I don't think that it's actually they are the highest. It's the profession with the highest number of suicides per capita or per number of people in the field. I mean, this has got to be telling us something. Uh, what do they go through? I don't know. I mean, we grew up in the day you get pulled over, both hands on the wheel. Yes, sir. Can I help you, sir? License register. Here you go, sir. That smooth sailing. But today it's not like that. I'm filming you. I'm filming you. So this is just part of the things that go on. But the suicide rate and the addiction rate, which I'm sure you're familiar with that, is astronomical. And that's and mental health. Cops are suffering mainly with depression and post-traumatic stress disorder at record numbers, which leads to alcoholism or some other type of substance abuse because they're self-medicating. They are very reluctant to admit to any mental illnesses they might have, depression. I don't talk about that. The manly man, I'm not going to tell my brothers. They don't talk. So that's always reported. What we know about how many police officers are being affected by mental health and addiction. That's only by report or those who maybe get caught at work. Maybe they came in with some booze on their breath. They get forced to go to treatment. It's an everyday occurrence though, and then these numbers are much higher, I believe, than the studies show. But suicide is 1 out of 4.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I'll tell you, over the years, we've worked with a lot of cops,
have
a lot of really good cops who've had some alcohol problems or some depression problems, and we've seen them turn it around. And I think the most important thing is that they realize that they can come forward and seek help. Like you talked about that whole manly man kind of thing with law enforcement, and I'm a man and I don't need to go see a counselor or something like that.
I'm not crazy. I'm not
Right. And
crazy.
I'm not going to see a psychotherapist because I'm not crazy. Okay. And I don't want my peers or my superiors to think I'm
And
crazy.
I don't want my guns taken away.
I don't want my guns
That's a
taken
big
off, which we know has happened
Yep.
many times until a person completes treatment. We know that
Well, it
happens.
makes sense, but it's the thing with police officers. That's a big dignity thing of losing. I mean, it is. So right, all of those factors, they don't want to speak up. They think they can handle it themselves, so they drink themselves into oblivion. John,
Yeah, and see,
it's sad.
this is where it really starts to take root, because now you've got a human being, you've got a man, and I don't care what color he is. I don't care what color he is. He's a
No,
cop. He's a cop, and cops
that's
come in
right.
many different colors. Okay, and you got to understand that regardless of what, this man is out there, and his job is to perform in a traumatic situation. Okay, because the trauma is all around them, and the trauma affects them. I don't care what race they are. I don't care, what their color is. I mean, the trauma of being in it will affect them. And when we talk about 1 in 4 cops, we're talking really 1 in 4 is 25%. That's
It is.
25% of cops. And something that you mentioned earlier, that's what we know of. Because a
That's
lot of
right.
these guys don't talk about it. They don't bring it up. They want to be a man's man. They try to internalize it. They try to bury it. So you never know until something bad happens, right? And they become
True.
self-destructive. So that's why it's important. It's important for them to do health checks on themselves, to really understand that help is out there, and certainly they should, be open to coming to it, because we've had so many cops over the years, and we've helped every single one of them. I don't know a cop that has lost a job by coming to us.
No,
I really don't. Back in the days when I was practicing, I don't know a cop that lost his job by seeking help through us. Okay, I really
no.
don't.
I think
The
that's
other,
continued to this day, John. I'm still going, and I'm still on your in your
yeah,
area there. I'm still holding the name for you. But yes, I don't see none that I know of. It works.
and
It
and
works.
and 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 that's a message that I think cops need to hear and understand loud and clear. A couple of my friends of mine who were recovering cops, and they're really, some of the best people.
They're the best to get on top of their fellow officer brothers. Those are the guys that will get them into treatment and tell
Yeah,
them the real deal. They listen to them. But
they
the other
do.
thing I want to mention real quick, and I'm sorry if I
No, that's all
interrupted,
right. Go ahead. No.
but with police officers um, and addictions not coming into counseling there's something if they want to if our government would put some time and effort into training, like or giving, like you said, health checks, emotional, psychological checkup, so to speak, something for cops to make sure that they're functioning with all cylinders flying every day when they're on the job. Why isn't that happening? Put some, instead of saying let's just get rid of the defund the police. Why don't you put some funding into treatment or health checks, as they should for the general population? We know mental health is the stepchild of government and every insurance company in the world. We'll always never get enough and always underpaid and understaffed. But there's something to consider, giving them an option to to check in with somebody. It could be another cop, could be confidential. I don't care what it is. But if it's going to keep them alive and keep somebody, these cops can't be ticking time bombs. I don't know what triggers when if they do the wrong thing on the street. It doesn't. I'm not making excuses for them, but it doesn't always mean they're a bad person. I mean, the PTSD, they're carrying a gun. Somebody says the wrong thing, and it reminds them of my son at home I can't control. They could go nuts. So I'm not saying that happens all the time, but let's find out what's going on with these guys so they're protected or treated, because
It's
we know the
stigma.
treatment works.
Yeah, they should be putting some kind of effort into the stigma of mental health, and how that drips down on law enforcement, because these guys
especially for,
don't
especially
want
for
to
law
be
enforcement.
seen, and I don't blame them. The vast majority of the population doesn't like the stigma of mental health. They don't want to think, they don't want
Right.
people to think that they have a mental health problem and they might be crazy or something. So I think it's very appropriate to try and get help for cops that need help, and for a human being in general who is in a traumatic situation every day or almost every day. They're in some kind of traumatic situation, whether it's a domestic, a car accident where they see dead bodies, or people losing limbs, or they're involved in shootouts,
Correct.
or they're involved in armed robberies, and they're trying to catch these armed robbers, and they're after a robber who's got a gun, I got to tell you, probably one of the most dangerous situations is a domestic situation where you have somebody that's mentally ill or drunk, right?
Absolutely.
And now you've got to deal with that situation. I mean, that is life threatening. That is because you that person is over the edge. What is wrong with them? What's causing them to go over the edge? This is another problem, and this is what has to be figured out. However, where I saw them heading, and it almost blew me away, was okay, the answer is to send, a social worker, a mental health professional, right? Along with the cops, into a very scary situation that might be life-threatening. Now, I know you had to go at one time and do evaluations on people, and you had to have the cops with you to protect you.
Correct.
What was that like?
Okay, yeah. I worked for community agencies where our clients were seen at home. It was the new idea back then. And when I worked at Greystone, which is a state psychiatric hospital, we'd get calls. If somebody was going off the wall from a family member, they'd call us. We'd go out there and do a screening, a psychiatric screening of sorts, where we assess their danger to themselves or others. However, we were not allowed to step foot out of our car onto that house's property without backup with the local police to protect our ass, excuse me. But
absolutely, yeah.
And we don't know what we're walking into. A cop doesn't know what he's walking into. So, but we have no training. We have no arms in that. But that's this new idea now, right? It's insanity. Those are some scary times, even with a cop with us, John. We've seen destruction in houses and plates been thrown at us, and I can't even remember. It is traumatic, and if that's what a cop's duty is every damn day, I'd go nuts too. But so yeah, they you want to send a social worker out? That would be the lead guy next to a cop who you need protection. There's not I don't know any social workers in the world that would go walking into a house by themselves.
I know I'm not. There's no way.
No shame in my game.
I'm trained. You're trained, and there's no way we're going in there. Okay.
I'm no shame in my game, John. No.
Yeah, you're going to ask me to go in and try and talk down some guy that's bombed out of his mind with a gun or something, some guy that is mentally ill, okay, or some guy that's having a psychotic break. And we're going to go in there, and with talk therapy, we're going to get him to be nice and to do whatever we want him to do.
Tell us how you feel.
So, how are you feeling? I mean, of course the guy's feeling bad. He's wrecking the house. He's shooting people, shooting the place up, whatever he's doing. So the problem is when somebody has crossed that line and they are, momentarily insane or whatever you want to call it, that person has to be subdued for their own good and taken to a hospital where they can be put on medication. Like at our hospital, we would do is we would have to bring them in, hit them with some Valium for a while to tranquilize them, level them out, and bring them back around. And they'll come out of it. They'll eventually come out of it. But you have to be able to get them from point A,
Correct.
wherever all this carrying on and the violence is taking place, to point B, which is a safe place, usually a hospital. That's where the trick comes in. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if there's any social workers that are going to try and do this and go along for a ride or two on this. But I'll tell you, they have to be young, new social workers that really
That
know
would be the only one, John.
what's
Anybody
going on.
seasoned in,
Yeah,
no,
I
anyone
mean,
seasoned in this field would never do it. But
yeah,
I'll tell you something else about going in with the cops. Well, first of all, you were saying, right, you got to get them in a hospital, get them safe, get them, off of
stabilize.
whatever, get detox. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way. Whatever substance they're on has to be out of their system. Then you can see what's really going on
yeah,
underneath that. Okay,
yeah.
so you got to get rid of that first. But secondly, going to do these screenings with the police, where if I, Joe Schmo social worker goes walking in, I might get a very different response than I did with a cop in a badge, because sometimes those good people, that sobers them up. Oh, the police are here. The cops get ordered, and I've seen it. Law and order comes many times with just their presence. They see a cop, they know what a cop is. Oh crap! I better do. I'm all right. I'm fine. I've seen it. I've also seen them not, but you know what I mean? Just that presence of a uniform. And the cops are usually pretty good with these people. Just relax. They can talk to them like we can't. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And in fact, they'd be better off with some kind of hostage negotiator or something like that that's
There you
already
go.
a cop versus a social worker. Personally, I think that trying to bring a mental health professional along for the ride, unless they have some way of stabilizing this person with some kind of medication, it's almost impossible. They need to be taken to the hospital and they need to be dealt with there. A social worker without that law enforcement training could actually make it worse because
Definitely.
and
Definitely.
it could jeopardize their lives and the lives of some cops as well. There's two sides to this coin, you know,
Always. You're
and
right.
and I
It's not wise to do. Well, let's put it that way. It's a very clinically unethical, at the very least, thing to do. We're not trained for this. Cops can talk to. Come on, man. Just, relax, relax. Sit down, buddy. Come on. They can talk to them differently, and sometimes that language can be effective. So when we're going to be there, tell me how you feel. Listen, how did you grow up? Was your childhood bad? What the hell are you talking about, you idiot? Get out of my house.
that's, that's
So
exactly
that's
it.
that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in some cases, somewhere in the future down the road, it might be a good idea, but whatever. But I'm not signing up for that one. Not right now. Not to go
You know,
alone.
the other thing too, we talked about they have a 25% suicide rate. What was the alcohol rate? It's a very high rate of alcoholism in law enforcement.
I can tell you because I was reading a study here by Dr. Indra Sidambi. Okay, and addiction. She said, I'm going to verbalize what she wrote here. As cops suffer from certain mental health issues at a higher rate than the general population, they often use drugs and alcohol to self-medicate to obtain relief symptoms. Every cop should be evaluated for mental health issues with a focus on problems with guilt, resolution, PTSD, and depression. Cops are loath to admit that they have mental health issues, and therefore treaters should employ a proactive approach. So that's that piece we just covered. But is there a statistic on that? You're asking me? Yes, there is. The estimated range is between 20 to 30%, compared to under 10% in the general population
And
of
that's almost
substance.
three times. That's three times
Yeah,
over the general population.
that's
Three
correct. So
times
10,
higher alcoholism or drug rate in law enforcement. It's usually
20 to
prescription
30
drugs.
versus 10% of us that are non-law enforcement.
Yeah,
So there you have that.
so you have an extremely high alcoholism rate or prescription medication rate, and then the divorce rate. I mean, the divorce rate is very high among cops as well.
Well, you know,
And people, I think the general public doesn't understand the trauma that these guys go through day in, day out. Okay. Not knowing what they're coming up on, not knowing what they're walking into, plus the pressure being added on. Am I doing it right? Who's watching me? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to hesitate and be killed if I don't act in a certain way that I was trained to act? I mean, there's all these ideas, I would assume, have to be going through some people's heads or not. You know, the other thing that really jumps out at me is who in the hell would want a job like this? You know what I mean? The highest divorce
you know what you mean.
or the highest suicide rate, or the highest divorce rates, 3 times higher alcoholism rate. I mean, to go into trauma every day to try and save lives, who in the hell would want a job? But yet you've got men out there, okay, of all colors, that are willing to take this job on and to go out there and try to do the best, okay, for their community. All right. Now, I think this whole defunding thing is just, adding fuel to the fire of this trauma. I mean, how much more pressure, which trauma is stress, pressure, right?
Yes.
How much more can a person take before they break? So I think people need to take a deep breath. Everybody needs to stand back. Not every cop is a Derek Chauvin.
Correct.
Okay. Not every nurse is a Charles Cullen, who, it's my opinion, has killed hundreds of people. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not every doctor is a Dr. Shipman, okay, who's killed 300 or 400 people. The point I'm trying to make is, in every profession, you've got some really bad apples.
Yeah.
The vast majority of cops are good. Vast majority of doctors are good. Vast majority of nurses are terrific. Okay. And the vast majority of most people are not killers. Okay. All right. And they're not bad apples. So in the various professions. So the most important piece to this is let's try not to expect to have laws without law enforcement, because really the weakest and the poorest of our communities are going to suffer the most.
That's absolutely right. And they need any more of this. They're paying the price for this more than anybody else. Yes.
Exactly. But I just think it's funny, when I heard in the beginning, one of the, our government came up with this idea of sending social workers. I started laughing as soon as I heard that, because that is like, and then, thinking of you had to go on calls, community calls, and you had to have cops with you to go on these calls to protect you. Protocol. What's the social worker going to do?
I don't know. That was protocol, John. If we didn't have a cop, we had to wait until a cop was available.
Yeah. And the trauma that goes on consistently with this job, this law enforcement job. Now multiply that by God knows how many times with COVID, because now they're interacting with people, arresting people, doing whatever they're doing. Now the chance of them catching COVID, okay,
sure,
adds to the pressure, adds to the trauma, okay? Now, are they going to bring that trauma home to their family? That's on their mind, okay? So if you've got cops normally going through, this daily traumatic stress, which, always ends up in post-traumatic stress, PTSD, right? So you have them going through this and living with this. And on top of that, now you're going to put them in a COVID environment where they can get deathly ill by just interacting with another human being. But not only does it stop there, but they can actually bring this COVID home to their families. I mean, how much stress can a person take? Now, if you look, if our audience too wants to just take a look at all these mass shootings all of a sudden popping up. Now, you and I know, because we're in the field, it's aftershock. And usually people go bananas after a life-threatening situation. So now they're in survival mode to begin with to get through COVID. So now as COVID eases up, okay, now they can have their breakdown because they're not in survival mode anymore. They've gone from survival mode into, I don't know what you'd call it. You'd probably know the mental health term, but a breakdown period, okay? And so now these guys are going, off the rails, and it's mostly men, and you're having all these mass murders. Never have we had this many mass murders at any one time in such a short duration of time. And if you look at it, it looks like it's as we're coming out of COVID, and the person is not worried so much about survival, being in survival mode, but now going into, just acting out all this pent up anger, stress, rage, whatever you want to call it, but all this traumatic stress. And these guys aren't even cops. This is just everyday Joe on the street. Some have mental health problems to begin with, though.
John, I'll tell you, it's a phenomenon. As a therapist, you've probably seen it. I don't know, but I do. You see trends. You see trends by the kinds of clients that are seeking treatment. They come and they go. It was depression for a long time. It was anxiety for a long time. Right now, for the past, I guess, 6 months or so, 7 months, I've been getting calls about high school age males after they're with these bizarre cases of anxiety, depression, weird behaviors. And like, what do you attribute that to? It can only be that they've been, under lock and key, doing this online thing. That's my opinion. I don't know what that caused emotionally, but so what's going on the streets with these shootings? Something, this has done a number on Americans. It's gonna, God help us. It's gonna take us some time to get back on our reality, back to our reality floating boat, and feel like it's okay again. And so I think that plays into these shootings too. People have lost their off their rockers now, but because of what they've taken normal away, and now it's starting to come back, and I don't think people really know what to do about it. But these kids I'm hearing from, that's a very concerning number, and it's males, and those shooters males, I believe so. I don't know if any. I think the one girl that I know of, long time ago, but probably the first one. Remember her, the school shooter?
Yeah, and you're right. They're mostly males, and they mostly started off with low self-esteem and depression, and that's what their igniters were. Okay, and they didn't get treatment. They didn't seek treatment. So thank God you're seeing them. Thank God you're helping them out. But how many are out there that were not
That's
seeing?
it. Are parents catching this?
Yeah, see, that's where the parents got to come in. Parents have to be mindful and insightful. If they see this, they've got to do something about it and get the kid treatment, because this is how this stuff starts. It starts to build up, and then they explode. Okay, that's how this takes place. Okay, keeping it inside until it becomes volcanic, and it just becomes volcanic rage, and explodes all over the place. I think the other thing too is that my suggestion is, don't defund the cops, don't defund the police. figure out how you can support them. Okay. Figure out how you can work with them, to get the best results we possibly can. But don't defund them, don't disrespect them, and try to support them. Because again, without law enforcement, you have no laws. And in big cities, we're seeing it. I never seen so many shootings and so many murders in all my life in such a short duration of time, along with all these mass, murders. Leo, is there anything you want to say before we break?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me back again, John.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you as well. And I hope people are hearing what you just said. And we can work together with police, and we should work together with them. They're part of our community. We need them. We need that. We need our law enforcement to be there for us. Respect them like they should respect us as well. They're people doing a job. There's nuts everywhere in every field, like you said, too. Let's not blame the masses, for one. Okay, let's really look at this and look at the whole picture before we we put a frame on it. Maybe it's not quite right.
Yeah, I mean, you in any profession, you're going to have a couple of bad apples or something.
Always.
And always in nursing and medicine. I mean, it's always there. I mean, in any profession. Okay, it's always there. Again, Leo Battenhausen, author, psychotherapist. He's written The Evolution of America. He's also written Social Side, How America is Loving Itself to Death. And he's also written a great book called Souled Out, SOULDOUBT. And it's really a spiritual read, but actually helps quite a bit with depression. And he has a practice. He has a practice in Flemington, New Jersey. And you can find him if you go on Psychology Today. Just search Leo Battenhausen, BATTENHAUSEN, on Psychology Today in Livingston, New Jersey. He'll pop up. Great therapist. Or check out Good Therapy. Search Good Therapy, Leo Battenhausen in Flemington, New Jersey. And I hope to have you back soon. I can't thank you enough for coming.
My pleasure.
on. Am I forgetting anything? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so, John. It's been a long time. I want to see you in person soon. Okay? Let's get together.
We'll get together and break bread. Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
my
sir.
brother. Have a great one. Take care.
You too. Be well.
Be well.